People who went to prison for a long time, what was the biggest shock when you got out? I went in for armed robbery in 1997 when I was 23, got 18 years, served 16 with good behavior. When I went in, my girlfriend Sarah was pregnant with our son. She was only 19 and scared out of her mind, but she promised she'd wait for me and raise our kid to know who his dad was. The first few years, she'd bring him to visit every month. This tiny little boy who looked exactly like me, calling me daddy, through the glass partition. I had his drawings taped all over my cell, stick figures of our family, and crayon pictures of cars and dinosaurs. Sarah would tell me about his first words, first steps, all that stuff I was missing. But visits started getting less frequent around year 5. She'd moved across state for a better job, she said. Gas money was tight. The kid was getting older and visits were confusing for him. I understood, but it killed me every time. By year 8, the letters stopped coming. No more visits, no more pictures. My lawyer told me she'd gotten married to some guy and they'd moved to California. Apparently, the new husband wanted to adopt my son, and Sarah thought it would be easier if I was just out of the picture completely. I spent the last 8 years in prison convincing myself that when I got out, I'd find them and prove I could be the dad my son deserved. I had this whole fantasy about showing up and him running into my arms, you know, like in the movies. When I finally got released in 2013, I was 39 years old. Everything looked different. Smartphones everywhere. People talking to themselves with little things in their ears, cars that looked like spaceships. But I was focused on one thing, finding my boy. Took me 3 weeks of detective work, but I finally tracked them down in San Diego. I drove my beat-up Honda, bought with my $200 release money and savings from my prison job, 1,200 miles to their address. When I knocked on the door, Sarah answered. She was older, obviously, but she looked good, happy, healthy. She went white when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, looking terrified. "I want to see my son." She started crying. "He doesn't know about you. Please, don't do this." That's when I heard footsteps behind her, and this tall teenager appeared. 16 years old, lanky, with my eyes and my stubborn chin. He looked at me curiously and asked his mom, "Who's this?" I stood there staring at my son, this young man who was almost as tall as me, and realized he had absolutely no idea who I was. Sarah had erased me completely from his life. To him, I was just some random stranger making his mother cry on their doorstep. "Nobody important, honey," Sarah said, still crying. "Go back to your room." The kid shrugged and walked away. My son, my flesh and blood, and I was nobody to him. But here's the real kicker. As he walked away, I saw he was wearing a football jersey with Martinez on the back. That was her new husband's name. My son was living with my name erased, playing sports I dreamed of teaching him, calling another man dad. Sarah begged me not to contact them again, said it would just confuse him and mess up the good life they'd built. She offered me money to stay away, like I was some kind of threat instead of his father. I drove back to my halfway house that night and realized that going to prison had cost me everything. Not just 16 years of my life, but my son's entire childhood. He had a father, just not me. I'd been replaced so completely that my own kid looked at me like I was a stranger. The worst part is, Sarah was right. What was I supposed to do? Walk into this kid's life after 16 years and say, "Hey, I'm your real dad, the one who's been in prison your whole life." Destroy the only family he'd ever known? I never contacted them again. My son is 26 now, probably has kids of his own, and I'm still just some random guy who showed up at his door once when he was 16.